What's going on, guys? Welcome to my channel where you'll find Monster Hunter news, builds, playthroughs and everything in between. Today we will be going over the origin species of Monster Hunter Frontier G, and these monsters are basically just monsters we've had throughout the series, but it's a lot more primitive version of them, and a lot of them are pretty much different monsters, and they're closer to their ancestors, and the ones we've been facing throughout the mainline entries are their descendants. So it's pretty cool to look at, and these monsters, like I said before, are from Monster Hunter Frontier G, and they are exclusive to that specific Monster Hunter title. But maybe one day in the near or far future we'll see one in the mainline games, but of course that's probably extremely unlikely. But of course we did get Magnum Arlo in Rise, so them taking assets from Frontier isn't too far-fetched, so one day maybe we'll get something from Frontier like the origin species. But yeah, so let's jump straight into it. Starting off, our first origin species, we have Guerrilla Damosu. So I may butcher that, sorry if I do. The names aren't as easy to read in English because of course the game never came to the West, but I'll try to pronounce them as best as I can. These monsters bear quite a strong resemblance to the descendants Gravios. They have a beige and very light green body with patches of green and yellow moss scattered throughout, axe-like crests on their sides and top of their heads, protruding spikes on their chins and underbellies, and several small flattened spikes running along the top of their tails to their tail clubs. Like the other origin species, as you will soon come to know, they are very aggressive to anything that threatens or attacks them, and do not tolerate any other monster or species stepping into their territory. Their abilities surprisingly are not as similar to Gravios as you would think. Lacking the fire breath and gas abilities of their descendants, they rely on their physical strength and the excessive amount of water inside them to basically fight their opponents. They shoot themselves at high speeds if they need to, using their tails to spray steam to give them the momentum to do so. They can also shoot out of their back like a mortar, and also just shoot generic water beam attacks from their mouth. They are primarily in the oasis and underground areas of the desert, generally residing in caves, and they can also be found in the fortress ruins. Up next we have Yama Kurai. These are quite close relatives of Yamasukami and bear a striking resemblance to them. They generally have a lot bushier bodies with hooked claws on the end of their whiskers and tendrils, yellow stained large teeth, underbellies with several large spines covering them, and just overall there's a lot of foliage covering their bodies. But using this, when they're desperate, they do actually change their upper bodies from their greenish colour to an orangey colour. Just like with Yamasukami, Yama Kurai are capable of floating through the air due to the gases produced within their bodies. Numerous plants and special seeds also grow on their bodies, and they are capable of producing a couple types of poison to wear down their opponents, and this is done in a multitude of ways. I won't try to explain too many of those ways, but one of them that's pretty cool is they can even do backflips and then send a cloud forward, of course a cloud of poison, and direct it straight at their opponent. Their tendrils are also quite strong, allowing for them to effectively pretty much just slingshot themselves, which is pretty awesome considering their size and the way they're designed. And they can do this at like a decent distance as well, by digging two of their tendrils into the ground, pulling back, and then just slinging forward. And on top of this, they are able to create large whirlwinds by spinning around a bunch, and this whirlwind slowly moves around the arena and then chips away at the health of its victim. As expected, they are extremely dangerous and are best avoided considering they are even more aggressive than Yamasukami. And finally, as to where you can find this origin species, generally they are found in the highland. Next we have my favourite origin species, Toa Tesukatora. This is the origin species of Teostra, and like its descendants, they are leonine dragons. They feature grey and white bodies with tufts of white fur on their legs and feet, large manes that are mostly frozen into a sharp mass of icicles, two large forward-facing horns that curve upward, fur running along their backs and tails that is mostly frozen, with frost and ice also covering other parts of themselves such as their wings and tail. As for their abilities, instead of explosive blasts and scorching infernos from their descendants Teostra, Toa are capable of breathing out waves of icy cold air, and with their chilling scale powder instead of the later descendants' explosive powder, they can create large chunks of ice to crush their victims, or even create icy structures or blizzards to freeze their enemy, leaving them helpless. Surprisingly, they are less aggressive than Teostra, but they are still very dangerous to approach given their destructive capability. As for their habitat, they reside in frigid climates such as the snowy mountains and polar sea, as you would expect, but similar to many of the other elders and monsters in general from Frontier, they can also be found in the fortress ruins. Finally, we have our final origin species, Vol'jang. And if you can't tell from its name's second half, this is the origin species for the Super Saiyan monkey, Rajang. This bears a striking resemblance to Rajang as well, as you would expect, but it is slightly different. Instead of its black coat of fur, it possesses a rough black and grey hide. Their horns are pointed upwards with a more pronounced segmentation, their eyes are pupilless and yellow, and they also have larger nostrils than the regular Rajang. In addition to this, their tails are also extremely unique to their design. Unlike Rajang, these beasts are incredibly strong and agile. However, instead of its lightning abilities, they are capable of using fire-based attacks instead, due to having their flint-like bodies that are capable of dragging parts of themselves along the ground, setting themselves alight to add an extra hot, spicy element to their attacks. When they are enraged, their tail swipes and spins leave patches of flames on the ground, and their slam attacks using their fists create lines of flames across the ground, making for a very engaging and possibly extremely annoying battle. As you would expect from Rajang's origin species, Vol'jang are incredibly aggressive beasts that will attack any and everything in sight. They are generally found in volcanic regions, as you would expect from their elemental nature, but as with many of the other monsters on this list, you can kind of guess where else they can reside, and yes, that is the fortress ruins. And with that said guys, that does bring us to the end of this video. If you did enjoy, be sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons, it's extremely appreciated and helps out the channel a ton. Comment down below if you would like to see origin monsters come to the mainland entries at some point in the near future, or even far future, possibly even the next Monster Hunter game. Don't forget to join our Discord, link is at the top of the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.